Hey guys, we are back. We are ready to work with our clay projects that we made a couple weeks ago. If you don't have your piece yet, you can watch this and then hopefully by the second art day yours will be ready. What we're going to be doing is talking a little bit about the clay stages first before we actually dive in to painting our, this is called bisqueware, our bisque fired clay piece. So let's talk about clay just a little bit more. When you have a clay project that you're first working with, the stage that it's in is called plastic, kind of like your toys are made of plastic. But it's used to refer to soft, flexible clay that's nice and squishy, and you can turn into these projects. You can roll it, you can flatten it, you can put texture into it like we did. Plastic means flexible. It's also very moist, so you can tell that it's probably maybe cool to the touch, and whenever your hands are on it, they feel wet. The clay that we're using, it will look dark gray when it is in the plastic state. At the end of your lesson last time, it was still in plastic, the plastic phase, and then you put it somewhere to dry, and then we're going to talk about that next stage here. Greenware. Greenware, I keep trying to move over so you can see the pictures better. Greenware is where your clay project is finished, but it's drying out. So these are the new stages of drying. It will start to look lighter in color. It's still going to be cool to the touch though. It's still going to feel maybe a little bit wet because there's still moisture inside the clay. It takes probably 2 weeks to dry out your clay naturally by the windowsill or on a cabinet. If you were to put this in maybe the sun where it was really warm, like if you live in California or Florida where it's sunny all year round, you could put these outside and they would dry a lot faster. Mrs.Marple also has a trick where she rolls the cart of greenware into my kiln room if I'm firing other projects. As long as it's been maybe 3 or 4 days, drying out slowly, I can go ahead and pop them in that room and they heat up and they dry even faster. So I can usually get it down to about a week. But if it's a big project, like these were small projects, if it was a big project, you would need it to dry out super duper slow because when clay dries out, it actually shrinks because that moisture leaves and the clay actually becomes smaller. So we need to do that slowly. All right, greenware. So it turns a lighter color. It becomes very fragile. So your teachers probably told you, do not touch your clay projects. And the reason is because it becomes super duper fragile that if you accidentally bumped it the wrong way or you were picking it up without thinking about it with just one hand, it would actually crumble into pieces. Kind of like dried mud if you've ever built with mud and it dries, it becomes very brittle and breakable. And so does this clay because it's like mud, right? So very fragile, medium gray color. So it goes from dark gray to medium gray. Bone dry. Bone dry is where your projects were when I came to pick them up. They didn't have any water left in them on the surface. So if you touched it, it would feel dry. It wouldn't feel cool anymore. It wouldn't feel wet. And they become even more fragile at that point. So you have to be really careful. That's why Mrs.Marple came down to get them, and you guys are not touching them when they're in the greenware or the bone dry stage of drying. They're also super light gray, almost white. Not quite, but they're really light gray. Bisqueware, that's where we are today. So bisqueware means it has been fired to 04, which is a temperature in my special oven called a kiln. So I heat it up super duper hot, hotter than your ovens are at home, and we cook them until they become white, and they're much more durable. Now they're not, you can't go play football with this or anything, but if you accidentally did something to it, like bumped it, it would still be okay. So these are a little bit more sturdy and we're able to paint on them. So completely white, fired in the kiln, and they're not super fragile. So if you went to like the Purple Glaze, or there's a couple of other craft places around town where you can buy like little kittens or baseballs or coffee mugs that are white like this, they're called bisqueware. And then you get to paint the glazes on top, which is our next step, which is probably the most fun, but other than building the project itself, painting is the most fun. And the kind of paint that we use on ceramics, you can use acrylics, temperas, watercolors, you can use whatever paint you want, but today we're gonna be using glaze. And glaze is special because it's got sand in it, and when we fire it again in the kiln, it's going to melt and turn into a glassy, glossy surface. So it's gonna be shiny. And so it does have to be fired again. And it's gonna look a little bit different when you start painting it than it does here in this picture, but you can kind of tell it's got a nice shiny surface on it and a shine. We are gonna be using Dunkin' glazes. Hold on. Most of the glazes we're going to use are called semi-translucent glazes, and the reason we're using those is because we want the colors to seep into the texture and still show. There's another kind of glaze that's called opaque glazes, and that's for full coverage. If you wanted to maybe cover up the texture and you weren't so concerned about what the little bumps looked like, you just wanted to clean over those, you would use an opaque glaze. But we're going to be using semi-translucent glazes so that we can see all that really cool texture we made. Now, the glazes you're going to get, I will label the colors, and most of you know this about glaze, that you have to paint it 3 times, and that is going to you're going to have some patience with that. And I'm going to show you how to do that here in just a little bit. But the glazes might not look the same color in the bottle or in the container that they'll end up firing to be. Okay, so this one right here, it's called bottle green. Okay, but it looks brown, doesn't it? It looks brown, and it does until it becomes fired again. So this is another one. This is going to turn green, believe it or not, but it looks kind of reddish brown. Let's see how I got my boo-boo today. Anyways, so this is going to be green. This is also going to be green, but it looks brown. Let's look at what those look like. Oh, those are other glaze colors. Other glaze. Okay, so this is what I wanted you to see. So the one that looked brown in the bottle actually becomes this beautiful color of green that's called bottle green. And then this red one right here becomes this green color here. It's kind of like magic in the kiln. It turns into these beautiful colors. Some of them will look similar though. So if you choose, there's a sunset red in the translucents, and it looks kind of like a reddish orange when you paint it on, but it's chalky. Kind of see this? How it's chalky? And then when it fires, it becomes this really pretty red-orange glossy color. So some of them are similar, some of them look completely different whenever they come out of the kiln, and I'll try to bring down as many examples as I can so you can see what they look like before you glaze them. You're welcome to use 2 or 3 different colors, or just one color. You can paint the top one color and then the bottom one color. I do want you to paint the inside of your bowl and the outside of your bowl so that it covers up all of the white spaces. And you're going to have to do them 3 times. Remember, we're going to do coats, kind of like with the crazy weather right now, you wear layers. We need layers on our project as well. So let's see, is that it? That's it for the clay stages. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to get my table ready, and we're going to glaze together, okay? All right, guys, we're back at the table. I'll show you what my table looks like in just a second, but what you need to make sure before you get started is that you have your clay bisqueware piece before we get started. I think Miss Shannon's group, I know that your teachers wrote your names on the bottom. If for some reason you didn't, they should look unique enough that you can tell which one is yours. And we'll let the teachers help you make those choices because they're still fragile at this stage, so you should be sitting the whole time while you're doing this. And you should have a placemat. So my table, let's see if we can see this, there we go. I have a black placemat down, and I have a plastic brush. So this is a synthetic brush, which means it's not made with like natural hair fibers. So these are super cheapy brushes, but that's good because the clay projects that we're painting are bumpy and rough, kind of like a rock, and we don't want to use those nice paintbrushes to paint rocks, right? Because it'll tear the hairs out of them. So we're using the cheap ones for that reason. And what we're going to do is we're going to be using glazes. Glazes are different than paint because if you remember a minute ago when I was talking on the screen about coats, you have to wear layers whenever you guys go outside right now because it might be hot in the afternoon, freezing in the morning, and then medium in the morning recess times. So you need layers, and so does your glaze. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to glaze your project, and you guys remember you can use 2 or 3 different colors. If you just want to use one color, that's fine, but it's like paint in that you have to clean your brush between colors. So make sure that you do that to be respectful to everyone else in your class and the glazes that you're using. The one I was talking about the green glaze, the bottle green and the foliage green. This one is the foliage green, but it looks red. And then we have bottle green, which is what I'm gonna use first right here, that looks brown. And what I'm gonna do is on my placemat, I'm going to keep my project and I'm gonna decide to paint the bottom or the top first. I think I'm gonna do the bottom. So I'm gently gonna set it upside down. You know what? Never mind. Let's do the inside first. Let's do the texture part first. So I'm gonna take my brush and I'm just gonna dip it in. I don't need to add water or anything like that to it. And I'm just gonna start painting. And you wanna make sure that you get into those little grooves in your project. So it's gonna take you some time to do this. And that's why I'm giving you guys both days to do this, because you really wanna make sure you get into those cracks. And remember, you have to do it 3 times, so it's gonna take a while. So you might wanna take a break between your coats. It's like nail polish. So you paint it once, let it dry, paint it twice, let it dry, and then paint it your 3rd time, let it dry. And then you would flip it over and do the back colors. So I'm going to finish painting the front of my project with this bottle green, and then I'll get back with you when I'm finished with that. I think I may also paint the bottom with a couple different colors. Okay guys, so what I wanted to show you really quick was I decided to go ahead and paint part of my other example bowl with this sunset red, which is really pretty. It's kind of an orangey red, and so I want you to see what the glaze looks like. It almost looks like a pink, doesn't it? But it's gonna turn red, and it's gonna look really pretty. And this is an example of that semi-translucent glaze. See how you can see all of those texture bumps? That's what we want to keep on there. And so that is what this will turn into. Do you see how different they look right now? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish up painting both of my examples, and then I'm going to take you into the kiln room to see the special oven that we use to fire these. And you'll get to see them go from chalky and rough feeling to smooth and glassy and glossy whenever they come back out. Okay, well I hope you guys enjoy painting these. You would stop this or pause it until you guys have everything all glazed up, and then at the end you guys can see the pictures of what the kiln room looks like, and then the before and after of my glazed pieces. Okay? All right, bye. Hi guys, welcome to my kiln room. I wanted to make sure that you guys got a chance to see what that special oven looks like, and this is it right here. Now there's some new fancy ones that have digital clocks and timers on them. Mine is old school, which I love. It's a nice large unit, and I have to flip these switches in order to turn it on. It uses something called pyrometric cones that I'll show you really quick. And they look like this. And what happens is when my kiln heats up, this starts to droop down, and it looks like this, right there. Looks like this whenever the kiln is ready to shut off. So it starts out straight, and then it does this little number here to automatically turn it off with a little switch on the inside. So what I'll do is I'll take your glazed projects, and if you glaze the bottoms, I'm gonna use these right here. These are called stilts, and it keeps the glaze from sticking to the bottom of my kiln. And so I'll use this to hold it up. Oh, see, that one's not big enough. Or the little prongs aren't close enough together, is what I meant to say. So I'm gonna take a smaller one, and it sits on top. So you can see how there's little needles that separate it from the white part of this kiln stilts. And then we'll cook them on the shelves. And I'll show you what those look like in just a second, until they're ready to come out. The lid goes down. On low, I have to put one of these in here to keep it open. It's called venting the hood. So I'll lower it, and I leave it on here for probably 2 hours if it's bisque, if I'm firing to bisque from gray to white. And then whenever we fire glaze, I only have to keep it on for an hour on low. Then I'll remove this and close it completely using my oven mitts. I have to use this because this oven gets super duper hot. So I use my oven mitts to close it. And then I wait another hour. And then I have to put the plugs in. There's holes located on the top, medium, and the bottom that I have to plug when it's on high. This is what the plugs look like. And I'll stick them in. Before flipping all the switches to high. When it's all done, it takes about a day to cool down because it gets so hot in there. And you want to wait until the lid is cool to the touch before you open it. And then you'll just open it up and you'll get to see how beautiful your projects are. They'll come out glossy and shiny and awesome. Thank you for visiting the kiln room. We'll see you later.